All right, welcome to Glitch Cube. We're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. And guess what? It's the end of the year. We made it through 2020, guys, and I can't believe it. This year has been very interesting for everyone. I'm sure everyone's been dealing with their own personal issues, of course. But we want to kind of take a look at gaming and really showcase some of the games that have come out this year. It's been kind of like personally, I feel like it's kind of been a little bit of a dry spell for gaming. There's been a lot of delays and a lot of issues and things like that, but there have been some real standouts this year, and we really want to make sure that those get the credit that they deserve. So, without further ado, I think we're just going to jump right into this our own mini gaming awards, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I was thinking I want to talk about what I've been playing, but I'm going to be talking about that in one of the categories, so I'm excited.
Perfect. Well, then, so we actually have our own categories that we've set up, and why don't we just do a quick rundown first before we jump into the actual games that fall within those categories, to give you guys an idea of what we look at and what we kind of treasure as far as it goes when it comes to looking at games. So we have categories of feels, those feel-good games, the ones that really tug at your heartstrings, the ones that just make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I'm a sucker for those games, so I feel like those things need to be showcased in a very strong light, personally. Then we have art, which is one of my big things as well. If it doesn't look good, then I don't really want to play it for more than a couple hours, personally. Then we have narrative in games. We also have gameplay. Then we're going to be showcasing the best mobile game of the year. We also have the best multiplayer game. Then we have a best casual game, best local co-op, and then finally, the best overall game of 2020. So, why don't we just jump in? And here we go. We're going to go with category number 1, which is feels. So like I said, this category is one that really speaks to me, and I love it when games try and create a message behind them to really get the player invested in it. And it's nice whenever you can kind of take something from a game and then relate it back to your own life, and maybe it can actually help you deal with some issues that you're personally dealing with, which I always find really awesome. And we've spoken about this before in our episode about depression and how certain games can kind of help you out with that, and how some games help with theming to kind of put you in the right mindset, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our number 1 game this year for 2020 is Spiritfarer for the category of feels. And this game it's made by Thunder Lotus Games. And from them, they've mentioned that it is a cozy management game about death, right? So this game, it's a management game. You're trying to gather resources and do all that. So you're fishing, you're collecting ores, you're collecting items to better, improve the ship that you're ferrying people across on. And you play as Stella, and what you do is you actually try and help out spirits to make them comfortable for their passing on to the afterlife. And it's such a beautiful idea. I feel like it just makes it so that it creates this idea of being comfortable with death, right? And you're trying to honor the people that have passed on. And I think that just is really something important to keep in the back of our mind right now, especially with the way 2020 has been. I know I've dealt with personal loss, and I know a lot of people out there have as well. So this game really just kind of spoke to me right from the beginning. And the designer, Nicholas Guerin, he actually had a really awesome quote in one of his interviews kind of explaining this game. So I'm going to go through that quote real quick. And it's a little bit of a long one, but I think it just really speaks to the game. So one of the core messages of the game is looking at death through the lens of legacy, inheritance, and heritage. I think we're all haunted by the idea of death, and the more you get used to the idea, the easier it becomes to accept it. The whole idea is to talk about death in a way that makes you have an insight on it that's positive rather than negative and dark. So I don't know about you, but
Hmm.
I feel like that's a beautiful message. And throughout the game, you're helping out multiple spirits pass on and getting them comfortable for their passing. And all of it is selfless acts. You never do anything to better you. You're always doing things to better your ship and make their passing that much easier. And through the repetition, you start accepting the idea of loss because inevitably you have to say goodbye to all these little spirit buddies that you have helped out along their journey. So I just feel like that's such a amazing, amazing game right there, and it just really, I don't know, it's just beautiful. So of course it's going to take the category of feels with messages like that.
Yeah, I personally haven't played it yet. It's been on my radar for a while. I really like the idea of kind of everything about it, building your ship with the spirits and stuff like that, and it's got a really good message behind it, and it's something I've been really wanting to get into just because it's so beautiful. I mean, I look at like what would my feels choice be, and honestly, my choice is I don't have any from this year. I'm all of the games I played this year that have made me feel things like all came out like last year, 2 years ago. Like Green, Night in the Woods.
Yep.
So
Those are the ones
with
that I
this
really
game,
wanted to talk about too, but unfortunately, like they're not from this year, and this is the
yeah,
big one that has come out this year. So
I think this one easily takes the cake
oh
from
yeah,
what I've seen and from what I've heard from many people. Like it looks like the one that hits you right there.
yeah, it really tugs at them heartstrings. So going on from that, so our next category is the category of art, which is something I
Ooh.
love. And there's so many games, and it just depends on your own personal preference when it comes to art in games and what you want to look at. A lot of people really enjoy the pixel art, and I think it's beautiful when it's done right. There's games that are hand drawn, which is amazing. Which actually, Spiritfarer, the hand drawn cutscenes are freaking gorgeous, and the characters look
Hmm.
amazing. Uh, One big one that stands out is like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, a beautiful game right there. But
Hmm.
I think that let's hear what our number one game pick for this year is. Why don't you let us know what it is?
Well, actually, I want to have another question, real
Oh,
quick,
okay.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
What when you think about like your favorite style of art in the game,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Do you like pixel? Do you like hand? Do you like paint? Like, what as an artist, like, what do you
I think
like feel?
when game designers can take like a hand drawn and like painter style and bring that into gameplay, I think that's amazing. It always blows my
Mm.
mind whenever they're able to do that. Like looking back like at Cuphead, Cuphead blew me away the first time I saw it, and when I found
Oh
out
yeah.
every single one of those animations was hand drawn, I lost it. I was like, I need this game on every platform. I don't care. Like it just is one of those things that as an artist it just drew my eye right away, like games like Gree, right, the hand
Hmm.
drawn aspect of it, and it has such a painterly stroke of just melodic watercolors and things like that really sticks out to me in a game.
I see. I'm pretty much right there with you. I'm all for like painted and hand drawn stuff over any of the 3D kind of things.
Yeah.
But for my pick this year, it was kind of a hard choice between a couple, but I went the easy route. I went for 13th Centennial's Aegis Rim.
Gorgeous
This
game.
is, it is, it's beautiful. I mean, you look at the creator Vanillaware. They're known for their great art style. And you look at Odin's Sphere, you look at Dragon's Crown, which I mean that game's kind of questionable with the character models, but it's still beautifully drawn regardless. And then they've had other big ones, Grim Grimoire, Muramasa, and it's just this one is like there's something about it that's the muted like anime-ish looking characters, but it's done so beautifully, and I've played a little bit of it so far and I'm really enjoying it. I I thought I was going to dislike it because I'm not much of a person that's into visual novel kind of games.
Same.
And I mean, this game is more than just a visual novel. Like, you actually move around the screen back and forth. It's not just menu after menu, but it's kind of fun. Like, in between the story segments, you have like these big battles in the city, and it's simple, it's nothing like Fire Emblem kind of strategy you need, but it's a fun time. And so far I'm really enjoying the game. Like, I feel like it's kind of that sleeper hit that not a lot of people will give a chance to, just because it seems kind of weeby, which, I mean, it is a little bit, but I personally really like it so far, and I feel like once I maybe beat it, like, it's gonna be higher on my list for like top games this year.
I think it's gonna be one of those sleeper like cult classic hits.
Which all of their games kind of are. You look at Odin Sphere, like, that on the PS2 is kind of like that little hidden gem, and then Dragon's Crown was kind of that local co-op gem on the PS3. So I feel like they have like one of those great games on each console so far.
Nice. All right. So moving on to our next category, we have narrative in games.
Oh boy.
So this category is a little different, and it can be interpretive in multiple ways, right? But I mean, for me personally, I'd like to get your feedback too on this, but for me, it's how the characters tell the story and how it gets unraveled for the player. So, and it's not just characters as far as the character that you play, but I consider setting and environment a character as well, because it's a living, breathing thing. It changes with the choices that you make, and it's continuously throwing challenges at you just as an enemy would or a player character would. So, for me, how the story unravels, how it's told, how it's unraveled for the player is narrative. What's your take on it?
I agree. When we were first talking about this, I was like, does he mean like story, or does he mean like how it unfolds? Because I feel like I could have two different answers for each one.
Right, exactly.
But I feel with narrative, it's more important, because you can have a great story, but if it's not told properly, it
gets lost.
It gets lost. And I feel like for me, a strong narrative in a game is more important than a lot of other facets of it. And I mean, this year there was maybe like a couple of games that really had it, but for me, definitely, I think Ghost of Tsushima
Agreed.
really takes the cake on that.
I think that's gonna win our nomination for best narrative in games by far. Yeah, there's some games that should have probably performed a little better, like Last of Us 2. Right, that was kind of people thought that was going to be the big one, and it's good, but it didn't hold up to the hype that I feel like it was generating for itself. Right,
it had a lot to try to match up to.
Right.
You look at the first game, and people literally treat it like a blockbuster movie, like a masterpiece. So it's like you can't really expect a second masterpiece.
Exactly. Well, speaking about movies, when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima, I feel like this is a movie rolling out in front of you. Like, this is an interactive movie 100%. And it is totally a love letter to Akira Kurosawa, who is an amazing director that even if you don't know his name, you've probably seen his movies, or at least have seen movies that have been directly inspired by his work. So the idea of the modern day samurai in movies now is all from Akira Kurosawa. He's the one that developed that image and created what we know of now for like Japanese cinema, and it's seen in animes and everywhere, where you see the lone samurai and like the long shots of like someone just wandering across a plain, or like walking up to a group of hoodlums that are causing a ruckus in a city, and all of a sudden this guy that's super quiet, no one knows who he is, just comes up and kicks their ass real quick, right? And like that is Akira Kurosawa 100%, right? And some of the other innovations that Akira Kurosawa brought to cinema, at least, was the way that he shot his footage. It was a lot of movement in the background where he actually made the environment a living piece to this. And I think that's why I feel so strongly about when it comes to narrative, the environment has to be able to tell the story just as strong as the dialogue does, right? So there's always something moving. There's always something going on in the background, the foreground, something that helps enhance the overall feels of the shot, right? When someone's going mad, they might just have a close-up on the man's face where he's just a pained look, right? Where it's nothing's really changing. He's not moving. He's stagnant, but everything around him is burning, or the snow is falling in a very hectic manner where it's really hard for you to gauge. It's not coming from one angle. It's moving at multiple angles or something like that, right? Where it shows chaos around you. So you're able to know what's going on in this person's head without them actually having to speak. And I feel like Ghost of Tsushima does that in such an amazing way, where even with the way that they tell you, or at least guide you to your next point of interest using the wind, that's such a classic Akira move that I think is just beautiful in this game. And I know that you played it a lot, and maybe it becomes kind of like mundane after a while, or a little tricky to follow, or kind of annoying to have to swipe up on the controller constantly. But I feel like it's such a clever way of handling that I just love it. And it just helps enhance the overall story that this island is alive, that it's constantly moving, and it's just a part of the story in general.
No, I fully agree. As someone who platinumed it and basically got everything I wanted out of the single player story, no, there's like multiplayer in it. I was blown away. I mean, I went into it with high expectations, which I usually try not to in games, because I feel like a lot of times they don't live up to it. But this game, I didn't lose interest in it. Even the collectathon kind of stuff, there was enough to collect without it being like Ubisoft, like Assassin's Creed, where you have to collect like 80 of this one thing, 30 of this one thing. Like, I felt like every collectible you found, you got to see one beautiful part of the map. Like, you do the shrines, right? Simple little puzzles to get to the end of it, and the zoom out is just beautiful. And then, you go to the spas, and each spa had like a story to reflect on. You do the haiku, and it's just this beautiful like setting. Like, everything about this game was just so different from other games. And I mean, for me, like, there's a few other good choices for game of the year, and this game, literally for a long time, when I first played it and beat it, I was like, this is my game of the year. Nothing's gonna top this. And it's just, I don't know, to me, I had a fun trip the whole ride. I didn't really get over it until maybe with some of the side missions, but aside from like that's minor. It wasn't a burnout. It was just like like, I want more. Right. That's basically what it was. I wanted more, even though the story ended perfectly. Like, if it would have gone on longer, it would have been like trying to make something out of nothing. And I think the multiplayer that came out like a month ago, it's interesting, and you don't see that too often, where a very strong single player game has a really good multiplayer mode. Right. The multiplayer mode's cool. You have 4 different classes. Each one has their own strengths and weaknesses. And then you have 2 different game modes. Well, I guess now there's 3, but the first one is kind of like a run to different circles and kill off the enemies. Survival, where you have to like guard areas. And then there is the like kind of story mode of it, where you have to go through different areas and fight different enemies with different specialties. And then I think it's implemented now, if not soon, there's going to be raids where you can team up with like I think 8 other people and take on like big bosses and
I love that.
like.
That speaks to like Seven Samurai completely, right?
And what's cool is it's all mythical too. So
That's awesome.
whereas the single player takes on more of like a realistic route, the multiplayer takes on the folklore and the mysticism of like Japan, and it's so cool. Like,
That's beautiful, actually. I mean, all these samurais back in the day, they've become legends. And like they might have just, taken out some annoying person in the group or someone causing trouble, but through the stories that person becomes an ogre, right? Or an oni, that they've taken down a great like tyrant that was breathing fire down on the land, but really he was destroying the land using his words or something like that, right? So through folklore we create these legends, and that's awesome to hear that that's where they might be doing, is bring up some more of the mythical aspects of it, because at the end of the game you become like an amazing samurai, right? You become the ghost, so legends will be told about you of like tackling these crazy beasts, so it just makes sense for that to be the natural progression of it. So that's really
and
clever.
you can do so much with it too. Like there's so much out there like in folklore, so it'll be fascinating to see what they do. I mean, I'm not expecting a whole lot because I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a mostly single player game.
Right.
So I'm not expecting them to make some like crazy like adventure, but it's a fun time. You get a few buddies to play with you or team up with randos on the internet, and it's fun. And I will say, because I always like picking out one thing that I didn't like about a game, the only thing that I didn't really like at first was I felt Jin was kind of boring as a hero. He seemed very like nothing really mattered to, aside from like the main drive of him with the story. I don't want to say anything about it, but
Right.
I felt like he was very stoic, very like he didn't feel realistic, But then I like sat back once I beat it, and I like sat there thinking about it. I'm like, in samurai movies or stories in general like this, they never really show a very human side to the characters. You don't really get this feeling of like, I can see myself there, or my feeling, like, which I feel we get a lot with main characters in games. We want to
I think that's
feel
more of like a
attached to
Western
character.
ideal.
Yeah, and it's once I realized that, I'm like, you know what, like his character fits perfectly. If he was overtly emotional, if you could relate to him at some point, it wouldn't feel realistic to that era, to that time. And I saw that like people were having some issues with that idea as well. And I'm like sitting there thinking like, it makes total sense. But I mean, that was my only problem with the game. And I mean, now that I look at it, it's not a problem anymore. And yeah, if any of you haven't played it yet, you got it. Of all games that came out this year, at least that one.
All right. So next category is gameplay. So obviously gameplay is a huge, huge thing in games. I mean, it's the most important part. If your game's not fun to play, then nobody wants to play it, right? So there's multiple games out there that have really pushed the envelope in innovation and really try to come up with something new and exciting. But there's been a couple standouts for us, and I think the number one standout for us, honestly, is why don't you feed us in? What's our number one standout for gameplay this year?
So there's my number one. I'll talk about number two later. But for number one right now, definitely Hades, I think, is the king, just because it even though it's your typical roguelike, they do so much with it that spruces up that genre. I feel that it's innovative enough to really stand out. It's got style. I mean, it could easily win the art category too, because it's so beautiful. Yeah. The different weapons feel so different, and it's a good game. Oh man, I can't get enough of it.
I mean, we talked about it a lot in our last episode too, or our earlier episodes.
Yeah.
But it's one of those games that just definitely stands out on every level. It can definitely go for, narrative. There's a really good story there, surprisingly, for a roguelike. The art style, like you mentioned, is amazing. But I think what really stands out is the gameplay to me, because this is one of the first like roguelikes in a while where when you die, you don't get frustrated. You get excited.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, sweet, I get to figure out something else. And the different combinations of the gods and the boons and the weapons and all that, like it just makes it exciting every run to try out something different. And you don't find yourself like pigeonholed and sticking to the same weapon all the time. You want to try out different things. And I just think that really speaks to the idea of gameplay itself and how fun it actually is. Because like being able to just pick up any weapon whatsoever and still have fun playing it, that's key. That's essential to everything. You don't want your players to pick up the shield and be like, oh, well, this thing sucks, I'm never using it again, right?
Yeah.
Then when it comes down to the actual like fighting, the fighting is so smooth and fluid. And then like you add on the idea of like all the voice acting and everything else that just gets put into this. It's a well-rounded game all the way through. And it's definitely one of those to check out. Everyone needs to play this game because it is just fantastic.
Yeah, one thing I really like about coming back to the weapons is that you look at a lot of other like roguelikes, right? You look at like Binding of Isaac, you look at Rogue Legacy, like you have your main weapon, which let's go with Binding of Isaac, right? You have your teardrops that you shoot out. Mm-hmm. That's all you have, though, is just a ranged attack. And then you, throughout the floors, you find power-ups to kind of change that. But it's always like kind of the same, right? You just gonna have to adapt to whatever you find. The thing I like about Hades is that it has those different weapons before the run. So you can kind of plan out how you want to do your run. And they're so different. Like, I'm a person that when I play these kind of games, I usually like to stick with just one weapon, get really good at it, and then just try my hardest to get everything done with that one weapon. I don't like to explore too often because I don't want to have to learn a whole new move set, new tactic, right?
Right.
And I haven't unlocked all the weapons yet, but I have the sword, the bow, and the spear, and oh my god, the spear is just it's my favorite.
It wrecks,
and
yeah.
It's interesting because usually when I play these kind of games, I feel like I usually only just stick to sword mm-hmm. or ranged, and seeing as how the spear feels kind of like both, it's that perfect combination. You power it up, you're basically invincible, and it's like you said, like when you die, it's always something, and every run it just feels different. It's not, I hate to keep picking on Binding of Isaac, where it kind of feels like the same thing unless you get to the final boss of that run. Mm-hmm. In that game you beat Mom, you have to beat her I think again, and then you go down to the next set of floors, and then you beat a boss there, you go down to another set, and it's like, with this game, yeah, it has that one boss after a couple rooms, but it just feels so different every time.
Right. And I think
even though the mechanics and the gameplay, deep down, when you look at the core of it, it's still the same. Get a power up in every room, advance, progress, all of that. The thing that makes it really stand out is just having such a strong story behind it, and being able to progress that story no matter how far you make it or how often you die. I think it's truly, like, gameplay wise, I think it's truly innovative to like the roguelike genre in general. It's definitely a standout, and I'm very curious to see like other games in this genre, what they're gonna do after this.
They have a lot to live up to now.
Yeah. Real quick, I think for some other like runner-ups for this like category. Same thing, Spelunky 2. I've been like watching videos of it because I want to get it, but I'm kind of like broke right now. It looks great. I always enjoyed Spelunky 1, even though I feel like it's like an arcade game. And I mean, you could say that about all roguelikes. They feel like arcade games. They're like arcade RPGs, but that game is pretty cool. And definitely this game is more of a remake of an older game, but the new Ys, Memories of Celceta, is really good. I am a sucker for that series in general. The gameplay is nothing innovative, but it's fun. And that's why when we were thinking like, oh, gameplay, I was like, I can think of one innovative and one fun.
Right.
And just hacking and slashing, a fast-paced Zelda kind of game, it's always a good time for me. And it's like one of those, like, I can turn my brain off and just kind of fight things. Yeah. But yeah, so those are my other choices.
I mean, I think that's kind of an important thing to distinguish against, I feel, is that, yeah, gameplay is such a broad category when it comes to gaming, but I feel like as gamers, we need to really focus on innovation in games and really vote for those games with our wallets, right? And really push game developers to want to innovate more. If you just keep buying the same games where it's just mindless hack and slash, that's all they're going to be making. So if we show that, yeah, we actually really enjoy these games that push the envelope a little bit, then they're going to continuously want to grow and change things up for us. So we're always going to get new experiences out of it. So,
I mean, look at shooters, like how they've grown over time, like they've had to adapt with new innovations to make them interesting. Otherwise, it literally always is the same thing.
Exactly. All right, so the next category is mobile gaming. Yeah, so this is a tough category because either you like mobile games or you hate them. A lot of people feel like this is for casual gamers, right? But in my opinion, I feel like mobile games have been really progressing a lot this year. They've really are starting to become, in my opinion, a main platform for gaming. And we've seen that with certain games like Genshin Impact even, right? That came out this year. And that was actually one of the ones that were pretty high up on my list for mobile gaming. But it just, being able to have such a grand RPG on such a small platform is actually pretty amazing. So I'm curious to see what comes out of mobile gaming over the next couple of years, because we're getting a lot of ports too. Like Moonlighter actually just came out on iOS a couple weeks ago, and that game's an amazing game. Forager is actually on mobile now as well. Dead Cells is out there on mobile. So like they're bringing in a lot of these big games that were only for consoles before, and now they're going to mobile because the mobile platform can actually, perform well and give you a good experience. So
I mean, also too, like a few years ago, a lot of mobile games got ported to PC, and I mean, a lot of them are pretty good too. I feel like with mobile games, it got a bad rap because you look at like
Flappy Bird
gacha games. It's either Flappy Bird, like the really stupid games, or you get like gacha games, like Epic 7 or, Final Fantasy Record Keeper or Dragon Quest of the Stars. Like you get those two kind of responses.
Or it's just only idle games.
Idle games. And I'm a sucker for those, but I mean, that was a different episode.
Right. Yeah.
For me, with mobile gaming, I don't do it often because if I'm at a point where I can play mobily, I'll bring my Switch. But I think I can definitely, I'm not going to write off mobile gaming as like scum, like a lot of people do. It definitely does have a future. And I mean, you look at some of the big games released in Japan for it, like the new Octopath is on there. I mean, it's like a spin-off, but it looks beautiful.
Yeah,
it looks like the same exact style. Yeah. You got Cinevalis. Like there's a lot of mobile games that are getting good.
And I've actually been replaying all the old Final Fantasy games on mobile, because why not?
True. I think they're doing a much better job with the controls and how to make it work on mobile. And I mean, for me, like, when you're going back to Genshin Impact, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I've played this on the PlayStation, I played this on the PC. I don't know if I could play that on such a small screen on the phone. Like,
It actually works. It's actually,
it
yeah.
does?
I haven't played it on any like other systems. I've only played it mobile, but it's
Yeah.
really enjoyable and it looks amazing. And I was very surprised with that game. And there's a couple other games. I can't remember what they're called right now. I just pre-ordered one of them. But there's some new
Mm,
games coming out early in 2021 for mobile that look like Dragon Quest 11, like that level of like
wow.
graphics, and it's all mobile. So I'm that's why I'm really excited to see what kind of comes of this. And
I mean, think about cloud gaming too, eventually, like being able to
yeah,
take
that's right around the corner.
console
Yeah,
games on the phone. It's like, I mean, I heard that people are working on right now of finding a workaround to get xCloud onto Apple so you can play, Game Pass stuff on your
right.
phone. And it's crazy. I mean, I remember 5 years ago you talked about mobile gaming and you're like, nothing's going to come of that.
It's all Snake.
But yeah, but here we are, and I mean, look at one of the biggest titles on Twitch and popular stuff, and it's freaking mobile games now. Like, it's
Yeah.
weird.
And speaking of one of the biggest ones that's streamed right now and super popular is actually Among Us, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
is actually our top pick for mobile right now is Among Us because it is really changing mobile, and I feel like it's starting to get people more and more accepting of the mobile market for gaming as
Mm-hmm.
a serious platform. And this game has really like simplistic in nature. It's the art style is very very simple, the gameplay is very very simple, but I think the underlying game itself really speaks to like our psyche, right? We love these
Yeah.
kind of deception games. Like when it comes to like the first one that I remember being really big was Secret Hitler, right?
Hmm.
Those games, like it, being able to deceive your friends is really fun, right? We all
Mm-hmm.
like little white lies and we like tricking people and we like kind of goofing on each other. So this game allows you to do that on a much bigger, grander scale. And it's just super fun to just walk around and end up taking someone out. And then when it gets to the whole like you can talk to each other again and like you're accusing your friends and you're like, no, I wasn't there. Like you're just trying to like completely trick and lie your way out of things, and it's just kind of it's fun. It's a fun little thing to try and goof around with people, and it just like I said, it just speaks to our minds and just something like a quick, easy thing to watch. And I think that's why we're seeing it boom right now on Twitch and other streaming channels, and some of the bigger people like Achievement Hunter. Speaking of them up from Rooster Teeth, I know they've been getting some bad rap recently because of some of their internal issues, but they play Among Us like every week and they're constantly putting out new things or new channel or videos on that. And for that channel to do that, like they have millions of subscribers. They've made videos for like 10 years now at this point across different platforms. So them showcasing a mobile game like that is huge. And I think that's what is speaking to the popularity of it.
I also think it's just really simple to get into. So, I mean, even people that don't play games, like, can get into it. It's the accessibility of the mobile, like the phone aspect and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, anybody can jump into it. And, I mean, it's always, like, fun. You go into any stream or you join a group yourself, and it's like, it's always going to be a fun time.
Yeah.
It's just one of those multiplayer games that just works. Even though it's simple, it really works.
All right, so moving on to the next category is multiplayer games. And I know we just talked about a multiplayer game in Among Us, and yes, that is a very, very strong candidate for multiplayer games, but since it's on the mobile market, felt like it should be pushed into that one. So...
And with this one also, this is online multiplayer as well.
Yes, online multiplayer games. So what multiplayer games have stood out to you this year?
I feel like a lot of the multiplayer games released this year were all more on the simple side, which isn't a bad thing. You know, the beginning of the year, I don't play these kind of games, but I got sucked into it. I played Warzone heavily for maybe about 3 months straight. Like, I'm talking like 6 hours a night, like getting into it, getting good too. Like, I was actually like happy at the end of it, like how well I was doing, because I don't play those kind of games normally. Right. But and then I just fell off hard. I stopped once our group kind of got busy and couldn't do it anymore. Done. I deleted it, haven't touched it since. And I think for multiplayer games this year, it's, you know, you look at Among Us, that's the big one. I personally really like Phasmophobia a lot.
That's a fun one.
But I feel like it's too young to put in a best multiplayer game yet, because it's still early access. It has a good chunk there of stuff.
Maybe 2021 when we get a real release.
Yeah, I think next year that game is going to blow up, and I think it'll be the next, like how Among Us is now. I think, actually no, maybe not as big as Among Us, because there is kind of a learning curve to it, but it's going to have a good future. It's going to be one of the top 10 on Twitch again, because I know it was for a minute there. It's going to be big because it takes the spookiness. It has that multiplayer fun. It's like the fun version of Dead by Daylight.
Yeah.
But if I had to go with a multiplayer game I've had fun this year, you know, it's brain dead, but it's fun. Fall Guys, easily.
Oh, yeah. That's a great game.
It's so dumb, but it's fun. Like, I don't know. I played it heavily for like the first month, and I touch it maybe like once or twice a week, and it's fun, you know?
I mean, it's what was that show, MXC, right?
Yeah.
It's just that, but gaming. And I freaking loved MXC. Like, the voiceovers, just the goofiness. Like, that game actually, like, yeah, there's no voices or anything like that, but it still catches all of that goofiness that those shows, like, brought forth. And I love it for that. It's, like you said, when it first came out, I played it heavily. Every once in a while, I'll pick it up now, but I still see, like, my nieces and nephews, every time I go over to their house, they're playing it. It's always on the TV. Like, they're having a blast. They're laughing at each other. They're putting on goofy outfits and just, you know, making fools of themselves on this game. And it's just, I love it. I think it's such a great multiplayer game, and they really did something right with that one. And yeah, super, super clever and just adorable artwork. Everything about it is just a really fun time, for sure.
I love that you bring up MXE, because I was literally going to watch it last night. Because I was like looking around what to watch, and I'm looking at Prime, because I never look at it, and I see that pop up, and I'm like, oh my
no,
God,
MXE's on Prime?
Show.
Oh no.
Yeah. I was like looking at it, I'm like, I really felt like watching a stupid reality show or something, like something just different that I never watched.
TV, right? Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, this would be perfect, because I really want to watch American Gladiators, but it's like nowhere to be found. So
that would be a fun one. But MXE is a good counterpart for that.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, this is doable, you know, or Silent Library, something dumb.
Yeah, I love mindless garbage TV, and I think Fall Guys really just placates to that idea of just garbage TV, garbage gaming, right? Where it's just like turn your brain off completely, just be an idiot for a second, push people.
It's like the best drunk game.
Oh yeah,
you know, drunk high game. Like, you're just like, you don't have to think. Yeah. I mean, you do, but you don't.
Not really. I mean, you're just running around being a cute little jelly bean. So, yeah.
Speaking of garbage, the best casual game. No, so
nice segue.
Casual gaming takes the form of anything, you know, from Bejeweled to Farmville to I mean, anything could be considered casual if it's not Dark Souls at this point. But
right.
this year, to me, there was really only 2 casual games that I actually put time into. And that's not because I don't like casual gaming. I secretly do. But
We all do. It's guilty pleasure.
yeah, it's like we all say we don't, but we do. And 2 that stuck out to me, and I'll talk a little. I know there's one that we both agree on, but the one I want to talk about first, it's secretly I've been coming back to it almost like a couple times a week, and Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town is probably one of my favorite casual titles that's not a big name that came out this year.
I didn't even know that one.
It's basically a remake of the Harvest Moon Back to Nature on the PlayStation 1.
Okay.
Or the Game Boy Advance version. And at first I was put off by it because I'm like, oh, the graphic style is like this chibi, like 3D, and it seems like a big departure. But after playing it, yeah, the art style is kind of meh. The gameplay is still there. Mm-hmm. It's everything I loved about Harvest Moon. And I mean, if you're a fan of the Harvest Moon series, you know that Natsumi, the Harvest Moon games released after, I think, the Wii are not really Harvest Moon games. They're really bad, right? Story of Seasons is basically the new Harvest Moon games. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what Harvest Moon is, it's a farming simulator, kind of like you inherit a farm.
Like Stardew.
Yeah, it's like it's what inspired Stardew. Like, you're making friends with people, festivals, all that kind of stuff. And if you're a big fan of Stardew and haven't touched a Harvest Moon game, I definitely recommend this game. It's a lot of fun, and it has all the charm. It has everything. Like, I really, really love it a lot. And I'm not super far into it. I'm still in the first year, but I'm in the winter. Mm-hmm. And it's a great time. If you want to sit back, not play Stardew, play something different, definitely that game. But if you want to play an even greater casual game, I mean, I think most people are going to say this, but I think Animal Crossing easily takes it.
Oh, yeah. And that game, Animal Crossing, came out at such a perfect time at the beginning of this pandemic.
It's like they knew.
They tapped into something. They read the stars, everything lined up perfectly for this game. Like, Animal Crossing has always been huge, right? And it has such a cult following where people are still playing the game from like 10 years ago, right? Or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And this game came out right whenever everyone went into lockdown. So, what else would anyone want to do except for go to their own secret island hideaway and just escape from the world for a minute? So, they perfect timing for such a cutesy, fun, like, no-brainer, like, escapism game right there.
Not to mention, like, the way they've been updating it, like, they've been putting some cool stuff in there, and I wish that they would keep putting things faster into it, because I hate having to wait seasons to see new stuff. But, I mean, from when the game first came out in March to now, like, now you can dive in the ocean and find there's like a whole nother category of collectibles you can get and donate. And the seasons have been fun. I will admit, I've fallen off of it pretty hard for a few months there. I would log in maybe like once a month, twice a month, check it out, make sure none of my villagers have left, because I'm very, very happy with who I have in my town, and I almost can't afford to lose any of them. There's maybe 2 that I'd be fine with leaving, but I have some of... Randomly, I lucked out. The highly regarded characters that people talk about online, I've lucked out and gotten quite a few of them. Yeah, like, I got Ankh, that Cleopatra cat.
Oh, lucky.
I've got Meringue, the rhinoceros with a strawberry horn. I've got... God, it's been so long. I got Zucker, the Takanaki.
Yeah.
I've got the pink octopus. Like, I'm very happy with who I have, and I've built my island. Like, I think I have over 200 hours in it,
Holy
and it's
crap.
just, I'm happy. Well, a lot of it too was my wife playing it. She
Oh,
got really into building the island,
right.
and we have like this huge part of the island that's just flowers because we were working on trying to get like golden roses and all the black flowers because we wanted to have like a certain
Oh,
theme.
cool.
And it sucks because like you can tell there's still parts of the island that we really wanted to work on, but because we got so busy with other stuff, we just stopped doing it.
Right.
But the other day I logged on for the Thanksgiving event, which I completed and had a lot of fun with, and I'm like, man, I really want to get back into this and play it because the thing I was waiting for this whole year in that game were the mushroom lights or the trees that you can get,
Oh, yeah.
and it was only in fall. And now it's basically winter, and I'm like, damn it, like I missed it,
Right.
and I, in the beginning, yeah, I kind of time traveled a little bit to make money when you were really able to make a lot doing that. But now I'm like, I don't play it enough, so there's no reason for me to time
Mm-hmm.
travel. And I don't know, it's just a fun game to like boot up, check it out, and see what's new. It's very relaxing, and I mean, you can spend hours on it in a day if you want to, just mindlessly doing stuff. But it's definitely fun, and I'm really excited to see what next year adds to it because there's going to be a lot of additions to it that I think will be a lot of fun, especially if they're bringing stuff from the old games in.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. It's definitely one that stands out for sure.
Yeah. Next category, I think we already talked about multiplayer, like online. I think that local co-op is a major one, even though it's kind of hard to do right now because we can't really
Be around each other.
hang out with people. But I mean, thanks to Steam, you can do remote, like the remote local play, which we've actually done, and it's really fun.
It works really well, surprisingly. And it does work if, let's say, your buddy has a Windows and you have a Mac. We tested that out, and it actually works really well where you can play Windows games on your Mac, and it's pretty smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's an awesome feature, and I mean, it's surprising that like other platforms don't have that. I mean, it's probably like difficult for them to do that, but
it's possible. So
it's possible, yeah, and it's possible to do local co-op games now without having to be near us for the most part, and it's a cool future, And this year there were quite a few good local co-op games, I mean, I was kind of going through a few of them, and I mean, the new Battletoads was all right, and there's a lot of like bigger name games that you could consider co-op if you really wanted to, but I think the one that really stood out to me was probably Streets of Rage 4. Not only is it a beautiful looking game, it's just, I've been a big fan of the series since I was a kid. I remember arcades, and I remember like at the arcade I always play Final Fight, and then at home I remember I got a Genesis pretty late in life, of its life, and the few games I had on it, Streets of Rage 2 was one of them, and it was difficult for me at one point, but I learned how to beat it. I loved it, and it became one of my favorite games on the Genesis. And I love the series. I love brawlers in general. I think they're a lot of fun, especially if there's like a lot of things to unlock and difficulty challenges. Like they're like my favorite kind of co-op game just because it's a genre I've always grown up with. I think back to like Turtles in Time. I used to play that game a lot with my mom, surprisingly. And that was probably one of my favorite, and still is my favorite, like beat 'em up kind of game.
That's really funny because I met your mom recently, and seeing her play Turtles in Time would be so great.
Dude, like it's weird. We used to play a lot of like random games together. I mean, we just played Sackboy's Adventure yesterday, and it was a lot of fun too. But
that's awesome.
yeah, it's For me, beat 'em ups hold a special place for me. Just like shoot 'em ups, it reminds me of my childhood a lot because those were my favorite games growing up. Like, I love RPGs now, and I mean, I did back then, but beat 'em ups and shoot 'em ups they were king for me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw Streets of Rage 4 come out this year, I was like, oh my God, like, talk about like a blast from the past. Like, any like retro gamer is like happy that that came out, and it's a good game
Mm-hmm.
too. You know, it's one thing to revive an old series, but to make it good, that's hard. You know, I mean, look at Final Fantasy VII, but I mean it's a different thing. You know, it's I love this game, and I think that at some point we should play it because I think you would probably have fun with
No,
it too.
I would love to. I think we definitely should. All right.
And
So that brings us to the penultimate, the overall best game of 2020. And I think it will come as no surprise when we say our final and our best game for this year is Hades.
yeah, easily.
We've talked about it on a previous episode for a very long time. We talked about it today when it came to gameplay, once again for quite a while. But Hades is fantastic. And it just, everything about it just stands out as such a strong game. And it's a game that makes you want to keep playing, makes you want to keep trying new combinations, learn different aspects of the lore, talk to everybody, unlock everything. It's one of the first games in a long time that I've actually have been wanting to just unlock everything. Like, I want to 100% just get all of it and just run through this game and just continuously beat it and just figure out all the little nuances in this thing and listen to all the different like audio tracks for the voiceovers that they have. Everything about it, I absolutely love it. So it comes as no surprise that I feel like this is the top game of 2020.
It was hard for me because going into this, when I first thought of my overall game of the year, I knew Hades was going to be it, like, for the most part. But then I started playing the new Yakuza game, Like a Dragon, and halfway through that, I'm like, hands down, game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
To me, like, this game is it. This is the game I've been waiting for all year. It was the game I didn't know I wanted, right? It scratched everything I wanted in an RPG. And I mean, if we had a top RPG of the year, this would be it anyway. Right. But as a big Yakuza fan, like it's my favorite series now at this point because the world building in them is so amazing. And this game does a good job at combining, you know, fandom from all the old games as well as RPGs in general, and seeing as that's my favorite genre, like this game just had it all. Right. But as a fan of the series, I will admit, and a lot of other people will say this too, is that Yakuza games have a kind of a slow start, and then about halfway through they kick it up to 11, right? Like they go into overdrive, and the story just gets crazy, and you're like, oh my God, like this is amazing. 3/4 in, it kind of plateaus. It's still really good. You're learning more. And then it kind of just, sometimes, like some of the games, you don't know how it ends. Like you feel like it finishes on a strong note, and other times it just kind of leaves you like, what the fuck, right. You know? And this is the only reason why I didn't pick Like a Dragon to be game of the year for me, is that the game was amazing all throughout, but there were certain parts of it that I'm just like, really? Like, I don't know. It was so good. Like, I just beat it last night. I spent maybe, I think I clocked in like 63 hours, and I've done a lot in it. You know, those games always have like way more stuff in it than a normal person can do. You know, it's a good time waster. And I wanted it so bad to be my game of the year, but I can see why some people are criticizing it a little bit. And to me, like, it's definitely the runner-up for me. Like, I'd still recommend it to anybody that likes RPGs or the Yakuza games in general. Anybody that wants a great story, I'd recommend it to them. But if I were to recommend a game that everybody should play, no matter what you like, Hades is definitely that game.
Yeah.
It's something like any gamer, unless you're like a sports gamer, then you'll probably enjoy it. But I mean, maybe if you're a sports gamer, you might like it because it's fast paced and kind of it resembles a sport a little bit. You know, it's got it all. And to me, when Hades released like the 1.0, you know, when it came out of early access, I was like, this game is going to go somewhere. Because I remember when it first was announced and put on the Epic Games Store, it was like early access and no one really talked about it. It like came out, but people were like, oh yeah, that's that Epic exclusive game. Like, it looks pretty, but there's nothing to it.
Right.
And then once it was released everywhere, it blew up because they added a lot to it and it just became a different game. And it's really cool to see that, you know, it's kind of inspiring because you think about some of those games that are in early access and they just kind of get lost. And when a game gets out of early access, you either blow up like Hades does, or you just kind of are there, you know, and most of the time that's what happens. The games are just there. They don't get big.
Right.
And it's a cool looking like success story. I mean, Supergiant always makes great games. I don't think I've not enjoyed one of their games before, but this one is easily, I think, one of their best. And I love their stuff. I'm always looking forward to what they're going to do next. So it'll be cool to see what they do next time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely one of those games that kind of keep an eye out and just see like how much is going to push the envelope, right? And how much is going to change the future of gaming in general. And just it's not just going to affect roguelikes and other games like it. It's going to affect everything. It's going to just change what we think about when we think about gaming completely. So that's why it has to be ranked as number one, because it's innovative, it's fun, it's crazy, it's challenging. The art style is beautiful. The voice acting is fantastic. Just all around great game. And it just shows because it's been nominated for like every single award out there. And we can easily drop this game into every single category.
Yeah, it really has.
Just about.
It's crazy how many awards it's gotten.
Yeah, so it's impressive for sure. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us tonight. So we've gone through our list of our top games for 2020. Did we miss any? Or you have some nominations yourself? Let us know. Yeah. There's plenty of games out there that definitely deserve recognition, and while we were putting together this list, there's a few that we had to, drop out of and leave behind. But there's definitely a lot out there that are just really fantastic games. And maybe we'll talk about them in a future episode and give them the light that they actually deserve, right? So I think I know what time it is. Do you?
Yes, it is. It's the favorite time of the episode.
Oh, it's my favorite time. I know it is.
I think it's more my favorite. But what I would love to ask everybody, what's your favorite of every category that we talked about today? But if you had to pick a game that's your favorite of the year, I mean, if you can think of one that came out this year and maybe one that didn't come out this year, so there's two games, perfect. But if you had to just pick a game this year that you really liked, no matter when it came out, just let us know. I'm curious. I'm always down to find games that people love, because there's so many that come out that I don't get to play, and if someone mentions one like that, I will definitely check them out. I love playing new games.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you again for listening, and yeah, that's it. Bye.
Yay, bye.
Bye, everybody.